Before I start talking about Peter Pan and Wendy, I kind of need to just give you a bit of an idea of. I mean, thinking about it, my 7 viewers know this, right? So I've got Peter, Hook, Tink, down here, down there. Ooh, you can see that another one there. Then if you come over here, there's those. And then if we go, don't actually have any Peter Pan on this toy shelf, but I then have this artwork. So, it's fair to say that Peter Pan is definitely something quite special to me. Oh, there's Paul just coming back. Okay. So, when it comes to my pan, I am not precious as such. Just, let me just check how you look in shot. Oh, okay, lovely. If I sit next to you, I'll be fine. But yes, I have particular things. Peter Pan has a resonance with me, for sure. As well as being one of my nicknames. And something I absolutely adored as a child, right the way through. So we've just watched Peter Pan and Wendy. I can't work out, why is the mute thing flashing at us on the TV? Have I hit the mute button as I've turned it off or something? Anyway, not important. I know. If only I could ever keep on topic for more than 30 seconds for anything ever. So I was going to ask you what you thought of it first, because it's going to probably be way less intricate than my opinion.
That's accurate. Well, full disclosure, I wasn't massively paying attention to it. It was very much kind of on in the background for me. I was kind of like fishing between that and my phone. I don't have the history, so I thought it was okay. Nothing like massive for me to like write home about and go, oh my god. I liked some of the stuff they did. They've very clearly updated it for a more modern audience. I'm assuming that's weave going on.
I was going to say, I just heard this like weird noise. I was like, what on earth is that?
So, I mean, I know there was a lot of controversy, however you say that word, depending on where you are in the world, around some of the casting choices, like making...
Has there been?
Like Tinkerbell being black, for one thing.
I've not seen any. I've not seen any fuss about it. So okay, but have you seen actual?
Yes.
Okay, fine, right.
Yes. Not probably somewhat more muted, but not dissimilar to what has been plastering with the recasting of The Little Mermaid.
Yeah. So it's okay for them to believe it's a fairy or a mermaid, but for heaven forbid, do not make them not white.
Yeah.
Come on.
And there was I think a comment you made partway through, which obviously kind of I picked up on with, the Lost Boys aren't all boys.
But I thought they handled that really well.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the plus points for me.
Yeah, they made it a non-issue.
Yeah,
and
it was like, here, haters.
Yeah,
that's very nicely done.
They had a character who was Downs. So again, they're kind of showing the broad spectrum representation. I think for me personally, the story is very of its time. When you consider when it was written, who wrote it, etc., etc. So I think they did do a really good job of kind of modernizing the story without basically modernizing the story, in terms of chucking out everything that makes it Peter Pan and Wendy, but kind of updating it for an audience that's probably a bit more aware of certain factors, like having people of color, like having people with disabilities, that sort of thing. I was actually surprisingly impressed by Jude Law's Hook, which I wasn't expecting.
You watch all the Dumbledore Peter Pan fan fiction kick off now.
But to be honest, like a lot of stuff that I think we watch lately, French and Saunders has got a lot to answer for. There are pretty much now, I mean, if you've got a character called Jack, forget it. We will never take
we're done.
The show seriously.
We're done.
Full stop.
It's really buggering up Torchwood for us, I have to say.
And a lot of things. What was the thing we watched that completely buggered up? Picard.
Picard.
Because one of the main characters is called Jack. And
Jack.
if you're Matt Fletcher, you'll know exactly what we're talking about because he had the exact same experience. But we do that a lot, along with anything that's like shooing a character away.
I actually did that at break time today. Whole other story.
So there are now certain things where, like, even if you say it in a certain tone of voice, it becomes Jack.
That'll be all, Joseph, thank you.
Yes, and there's an awful lot of that as well. And it's literally those two sketches. It's just House of Idiot and those two lines from House of Idiot and the whole, was it Christmas Carol, was it?
Yeah, but this is the thing, right? So there's certain things that from French and Saunders that just blend into everything we do.
Yes.
Because you can't have someone with any kind of aged or croaky voice.
Never knew
Fred wasn't lucky enough to be in a picture with him. And again, anything that why are we constantly bombarded? So yeah, I think our life has just turned into French and Saunders, as has this video, as do all our videos.
Dawn, Jennifer. How much chocolate have you eaten in the past 3 weeks?
Dawn.
Jennifer.
No, I'm just gutted that I don't get to be ab fab. And I like this Vicar of Tibley, but so back to Peter Pan.
Yes. So yeah, I thought it was okay, but I spent as much time going, why have they done that? And what? And French and Saundersing it, as I did actually watching it. So that's my 2 pence.
Fair. Now here's the thing. I thought it was okay, but that's damning from me to say that, it was all right. It was okay. It was on.
Especially if it's Peter Pan.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people are going to expect me to say that I want the 1953, 51? Early 50s.
Asking the wrong person.
Cartoon. And actually, no, not really. I mean, yes, that's what introduced me to Peter Pan, and then obviously as I grew up, I read the book and but for me, the film that nails it is the 2002/2003. I think it was Christmas 2002 actually, where Jason Isaacs plays Mr. Darling and Hook. That is
that the blonde Peter?
Yeah. That for me is absolutely Peter Pan done right, and you're going to have to go some in my lifetime to beat it. I think there was like Pan the mini-series, which was dreadful. There was the Disney Return to Neverland, which has got an amazing song in it called I'll Try, but the film itself, like all of those Disney sequels of that sort of late turn of the millennium, the only one of those I've liked was Aladdin 3, King of Thieves, which was very good. Return of Jafar's terrible. Hey, Charlie Mouse. I'm probably going to get scratched any second because that's what happens when Charlie wants food. So the thing with this for me was it's a reimagining in the same way that Dumbo was, and it's a bit weird because where for Dumbo for me it worked because to me I'm not aware Dumbo was a book. I think Disney just came up with it. I could be wrong. But this obviously has source material to stay true to.
Yes.
And I think
And to be
This
fair, the credits do actually say at the end that it's
based on the book and the cartoon.
Yeah.
Which I can see because there were certain touches that sort of came in, like eventually Hook more or less ended up in his cartoon costume, barring the big plumy feather hat. But this is where it's kind of a double-edged sword for me. I wasn't really excited by anything in it. And even thinking about Peter Pan, seeing Peter and Tink in the parks, going on Peter Pan's flight. Yeah, I'm being clawed. He wants food. When I'm in the park and there's Peter Pan stuff out, or if I rewatch the cartoon or rewatch the other version I just mentioned, when I reread the book, there's always this really, at my absolute core, kind of thrill and love and excitement every time, because it is one of like my real, like in Inside Out, they've got the little balls which are your core balls. I must have a green one which is Peter Pan up in my head, and it really, it gets to me. R2D2 gets to me. Certain things to do with Doctor Who get to me. It's all childhood trauma coping mechanisms, if I'm completely honest. But they are what they are. So this didn't massively excite me at any point, which I think is why for me it was just that it was okay. They've got some really nice things they've done, like the inclusion is fantastic and the representation is fantastic, and you apply that to a Peter Pan real world scenario, and yes, the indigenous peoples that have gone to Neverland are going to be realistic and not red-faced speak how type as they are in the cartoon, incredibly racist. But again, you look at it of its time, that was very much how American indigenous people were portrayed in stories to children around the world generally. I can think of how even I played Cowboys and Indians as a child, how we depicted Indians.
Heap big trouble.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of stuff. So I kind of get the whole place and time and all the rest of it. So to see it kind of brought up to a natural, real world sensibility was nice. Like you say, the Lost Boys had different nationality, down to different accents. Like there was one very American sounding one. There was one that sounded like he was probably from some part of Africa or other. There was an Eastern Asian looking child, but I don't remember them having a accent per se.
I don't remember them actually having a speaking part.
No, because they're the one that said it was when in Skull Rock when he says Peter's being dramatic, and she's like, not being dramatic. Now he's being dramatic. What?
Being dramatic.
Well, again, they got a lot of Peter's character. This is the thing. They actually stayed true to the characters, I felt. Because Peter was the cocky, self-assured. He's actually quite a little brat. If you read the book, incidentally, if you read it as a child, you read the magical side into it. You read it as an adult, and this is where his Dark Materials kicks in, after you've experienced dust. Pixie dust. It all becomes together. And you read it in a very... There's parts of it that come across quite skin crawly and sinister. Particularly about Peter and Wendy's relationship and the controlling factor, and that it kind of, because he stops growing up on the borderline of puberty, which is where Wendy is, there is this kind of, it's almost like because she's not stopped growing and is starting to, the body clock's starting to tick over, it's also a bit, you can read it as a bit inappropriate of her at times. So actually, if you read the proper original source novel, if you read The Little White Bird, which is the prequel where Peter and Tink are kind of first introduced, that's just almost Lewis Carroll nonsense. It's quite a difficult read, I found. But yeah, so the original tale isn't fairy tale light and fluffy. It's proper fairy tale, dark and a bit grim.
I was going to say, because to be fair, proper fairy tales are not light and
yeah,
fluffy.
Like The Little Mermaid doesn't get a happy ending and turns into foam at the end. I think don't Hansel and Gretel actually get eaten in the original version and stuff like that.
Something, or I'm sure like
They don't have. It's
their mother and father get like sort of killed and pecked out by like birds and stuff.
So actually, what J.M. Barrie wrote was far more traditional fairy tale to what we think of a fairy tale today.
Disney would have us think it's a fairy tale today.
Well, there is also that, which is fine when it's stories, but it was when they do it with actual history, like Pocahontas, that sort of makes me sort of go, yeah. Anyway,
Google it.
Yeah, look it up. So they've got kind of the core of the character. So Wendy being the sort of, the Darlings are a privileged family. Look at where they live in Bloomsbury in London, in that enormous house, and yada yada yada. And yes, they've got a dog as staff, but it's still staff. And there is supposed to be other staff in the house and all this. There's cook and there's all this and the other. So she is very much the precocious kind of girl of her time.
Privileged white girl.
Yeah.
That entails.
But Britain of that early 19th century, early 20th century, beg pardon. So they nail the beats right, and they do. So they do the representation correctly, because why would Peter? I know the original story is portrayed as, and they don't talk about it in this version. I think right, because that's where they get their diversity from. But it's he actually steals babies who fall out of their pram in Kensington Gardens, and I would have thought most babies in prams in Kensington Gardens at that time would probably have been white privileged family babies out with nanny. It's why there's a Peter Pan statue in Kensington Gardens, etc., etc. So I kind of get that, yes, but again, that's J.M. Barrie writing from his point of view at that time. If you expand the legend, then why wouldn't there be certainly people with disabilities, colours, creeds, whatever. Again, and I thought what was nice was
you could actually argue that you'd be more likely to have people with disabilities, because you could imagine people of that era kind of discreetly abandoning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's something wrong with this one, tipping out the pram.
Yeah,
kind of thing. So they do that really, really well. I thought the relationship they did, because there's always been this kind of, what is the real relationship between Hook and Pan? Why is it so
antagonistic?
Yeah, and all that, and that's been sort of explored in various ways in the past. I think what they do here is quite nice, and again, that's taken from a couple of more recent Disney spin-off books, like the what's it called, the Fright series or whatever they're called. I recently read the Captain Hook version. There were elements from that story in this, so they've drawn on a lot of Peter Pan media to put it all together. And I think if you're coming to it without any kind of expectations or any kind of ideas, it looks glorious. I thought the CG was really good. It all looked seamless. Neverland looked a bit too much like a real place. And it's kind of weird, because my criticism of Hook, which I don't like, was that Neverland looked like a set. It looked fake. And that was intentional, I read somewhere. Because Neverland's supposed to be this not real place, he made it look not real. But I was like, but it looks not real to the point where it looks like a film set.
Yeah.
It's got to look not like our world, but it's got to look an actual...
There are ways to make it look not real without making it look artificial.
Yeah. And again, that kind of... I can remember first time I saw Hook was 1992 in Orlando, my very, 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 very first trip to Orlando. And
Is that the Dustin Hoffman one?
Yeah. And Bob Hoskins as Smee.
I remember him being a really good Smee.
Yeah.
Let's face it,
but that's the whole.
Hoskins.
I think it takes far too long for Peter to remember he's Peter, and it also gets a bit creepy when you start thinking about. So he married Wendy's granddaughter, and then had kids with her. It's a bit like, again, a child wouldn't think of it, and an adult sort of goes, ooh. But yeah, I sat through the entire film. First time I saw Hook like this. I can remember just like my face just kept no, all the way through it. And I just came out rubbish. I'm just going to see Star Trek 6 again, stomped into another screen.
Bear in mind, Paul was a lot more laid back then.
Was I? No. Actually, it's weird. That's a whole other conversation, but not for this.
Because we've already gone on enough tangents.
Probably. So yeah, so the core characters are there. They're
Well
great.
done
The
if you're
look
still watching.
is
By the
great.
way.
Yeah, nobody's bothering at this point. Are they? I don't know why we carry on. But it just, it just didn't have the magic. Ultimately,
Fair.
it just didn't have the magic for me. Nicely done. If you really want to watch proper spot-on version of Peter Pan that's true to the story, fully true to everything, because this meandered the story a lot. I mean, it was interesting because obviously what you didn't have was, because they'd not sort of done the horrendously racist indigenous aspect of it, they'd kind of taken Tiger Lily in a completely different direction. So rather than her have to be just a kidnapped girl and rescued, it was the two boys get kidnapped, chained up at Skull Rock, and then she's part of the rescue team. I thought that was a nice change to it. It was weird, they didn't really kind of bring the crocodile in an awful lot. I had that one scene and that was kind of done. And I thought, well, given that's supposed to be a massive drive for Hook, because the whole reason he wants him and Pan have always been a thing, and it's always been a kind of almost play fighting thing until the hand. And when Peter cut the hand off and the crocodile ate it, and that's why he's got the hook, that's why Hook then became bitter and twisted and out for revenge, because he's then always running from the croc and chasing Pan, because the croc wants the rest of him, and he blames Pan for losing his hand, which is kind of fair because he did actually cut it off. But again, Peter's cocky thing is just sees it as a game and it doesn't matter. You didn't have the arrival to Neverland is completely different. So when the pirates shoot the cannonballs, rather than it all just sort of going down onto the pirate ship and then ended up in Skull Rock, it should be Peter gets separated, and the Lost Boys, as they did, find Wendy, but he's already given the whole kiss and the thimble thing has happened at that point. So when they shoot her down, because Tink, being jealous and spiteful, that's a big thing. Tink, a lovely version of Tink, but wrong. She's supposed to be vain, spiteful. She's supposed to be like the 7 deadly sins, right? She's that. She basically arrives back to Neverland first and tells the Lost Boys to murder Wendy. Like she's an evil bird. Peter said, shoot it out the sky. So they're firing arrows at her, and one hits, but it's only because she's got the necklace with the acorn that she doesn't die. And they think she's dead because she falls out of the sky because she knocks all the happy thoughts out of her head, and they build a house around her, and that's where you get Wendy houses. That's why the name comes from. Because I'm fairly certain, I need to double check this, but I think Wendy as a name didn't exist until J.M. Barrie invented it for Peter Pan.
Not a clue.
I need to check that. I'll fact check that. Or you can, just Google it.
Yeah.
So there was things like that that were quite different.
Yeah,
and then took the rest of the story on a different
I like
path.
that Wendy, and again, this kind of touches on the whole kind of modernisation of it, but I like the fact that Wendy in this was not passive like she has been in most of the.
Yeah, no, she wasn't. She wasn't. She drove the story, and she was. I mean, if anything, I think she was portrayed as the larger hero than Pan, because they got Pan right with his spoilt, bratty attitude. So actually, the fact that, and again, he brings her to Neverland to be mother, and essentially, that's what she plays. She plays a mother fighting for her children. So actually, when you look at those kind of aspects of it, what this version does something quite wonderful and quite. But again, it's a look through today's lens, not the lens of the time it was written, which is fine. But just for me, doesn't have the magic. And that's really all it is. The pixie dust wasn't there. So yeah, it's there. It's fine. I am now going to make you watch the 2002, not right now.
But I have seen the 2002.
Okay.
I've got it. I think I've got it on DVD.
Oh, okay. So you liked enough to buy it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So yeah, but that does, and it's things like, she wakes up to see Peter crying in the nursery, and it's like, boy, why are you crying? Which is why I laughed at the end when she finally says that line. It's a bit weird that she was calling him boy at the end of the film on top of her roof, though. Like, but anyway,
Victorians.
old people. So it's probably a nice one to sit down with your family, particularly if your kids aren't overexposed to other versions of Peter Pan.
Or if you don't have the history of Peter Pan that some viewers do.
That was a dig. That was a personal slur on me.
An observation. Not a dig.
Look, I can't help it if I cry every time we go on Peter Pan's flight in Disney because I'm so happy to be there. It's just when you get in the little boat and you fly through the thing and he goes off to Neverland. Here we go.
I'm also assuming, given you were walking around as I came upstairs, that you've done the pictures.
I've done the stuff. I didn't go up.
He cried every time he opened one of those pictures for me.
They're beautiful. They're lovely, and they're Peter Pan, and they're really nice messages, and they're from him. Why wouldn't I? Anyway, so that's it. That's our thoughts on Peter Pan.
Well, mostly his and some of
A little
mine.
bit of his, yeah.
I didn't have that many thoughts.
He didn't have that many thoughts. I've got all the happy thoughts. Just saying.
Oh my god, that's going to be the bloody still on the video.
I might make it.
Don't you dare.